This is like preview season right now, man. First we had a demo, now we have a beta, and you guys see in the background I have a little bit of the Division 2 beta. I was one of the lucky ones. I have not pre-ordered this game. I will not pre-order this game, but I did sign up on Ubisoft's website to hopefully get a code to gain early access. I was able to gain early access, so I was nice and happy, and I got to play that over this weekend. I was also one of the few to get into the server because I know a lot of people are having issues connecting to the game. You know, basically it's one giant gangbang. Everybody's trying to get into just a couple of holes, sort of like the YouTube order trying to fuck himself with his own dildo. So to give you an idea of what I want to talk about with the Division beta, we got to go all the way back to when the Division was first released, back with its original game. Now, back when the original game was released, I was on my break from YouTube. Many of you guys remember I took off almost about a year because my house was being built and I was staying with family at the time. The Division launched right after I pretty much took a break from YouTube. I really didn't get a chance to dive into a number of the videos that I wanted to with the Division. There were a number of things that I wanted to say about it, but I just didn't have the facilities to do my commentaries that I wanted. I got to do a couple videos. I got to talk some of the things about like my broad ideas about the game, but I never really got to dive into it like I used to do with Call of Duty, Mass Effect 3, and Destiny. So the Division never really got the full treatment from me. But in the few videos that I got to talk about the Division, I was able to talk about some of the things that I liked and that I didn't like. One of the things that I absolutely loved about the Division was the campaign. I loved playing that game when it first launched. I liked the mission structure. I liked the side mission structure. I liked the fact that you had to choose between building your 3 divisions. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I liked going from section to section in New York City. And of course, being a New Yorker, I knew everywhere the fuck I was supposed to go. I loved the scale of New York. There were just so many things that the Division did right when it came to the PvE portion of the game, that came to the campaign portion of the game. I got to play it, got all the way through to the end, and when you get to the end, that's where the problems came in. Once you got to Endgame of Division 1, that's where I started noticing whether or not this game was going to have a decent future. There were 3 things that I really noticed off the bat. First and foremost is the one that everybody noticed, the technical problems between the glitchers, the exploiters, all the cheats and shit like that. One of the videos that I posted was like 30 or 40 of us running the hardest missions in the game. 30 fucking people in one mission because you were able to glitch it out and basically run it in like 10 minutes as opposed to an hour. That shit was hilariously fantastic to play, and one of the most fun things that I did with the Division when it came to Endgame. Because the crux of the problem that I had with the Division was all in the Endgame portion. The first and foremost problem is that the Division is a grounded game. Unlike Destiny, unlike Anthem, with space magic and robots and science fiction and fantasy, you can go in any direction you want in order to add more content. I can add a new alien type, I can add a new subclass, I can add a new super, I could add an extra element or whatever I want. And Anthem, I could add a new javelin, I could do a new freelancer, I could add some more aliens. There's all kinds of things you can add because the limits of those 2 games are your imagination. That's really it. That's the only limit that those games have, is what the creators of the game can come up with in order to add new content. The Division was different. The Division is grounded in a little bit more realism. I can't really add aliens to the Division. Oh, I can, but I'm really jumping the shark at that point. I can't do super jumps. I can't add exosuits or the Call of Duty route and shit like that. You had to really keep it to just technology and science. And you had to limit yourself to what's realistic and what's unrealistic. And some of the problems that the game had was the unrealism that the game had. Not the realism. The real bullshit parts of the game that really didn't make any goddamn sense, such as shooting an entire LMG clip into someone just wearing a fucking t-shirt. I'm sorry. That was just bullshit any way you looked at it. Now, I get it. You can't make the game too easy. You do have to make enemies a little bit of bullet sponges so that they could take a little bit of damage. But the biggest problem with the Division is that where you have no space magic and your abilities are really technologically based as opposed to space magic and fantasy where you're not killing people with superpowers and shit like that, the Division had its issues. It had its issues with expanding content, but the big problem that it had was Endgame. Once you got to the end of the Division, you really didn't have much else to do because Ubisoft really didn't think that far ahead. You could run into the Dark Zone a little bit, which is utterly fucking cancer. You can play some of the PvE sections, do some of the side missions, the collectibles. But the outside world, aside from the Dark Zone, was really, for the most part, dead. I mean, aside from going and farming the Bullet King. Y'all remember that dude? When we just shot that motherfucker, whatever the hell it was? Oh, man, we chewed that motherfucker up to try to get drops and shit like that. But essentially, that's what people were doing to try to get drops in the game. You had all this content that was in the Dark Zone, but obviously we know how fucked the Dark Zone was at that time. You had the glitchers, the exploiters, and then the outside for the PvE players. What were you doing? You're running the same content over and 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 over again, and basically doing it on harder difficulties. Yeah, Destiny does that shit. Anthem's gonna do that shit, but again, there was a little bit of differentiation in what you could do in Destiny. I could do it on my Titan, and then turn around and do it on my Warlock. The Division really doesn't have that. Yeah, we had 4 characters, but it was still a human character. It was still doing identical shit. So at the time that the Division started rolling out the Incursion and then the first DLCs, I really started to lose the appeal of the game. It wasn't that it was a bad game, it was just that it needed some help. And by the time it actually started getting the help, there was some content that Destiny was rolling out that I was really enjoying. Eventually, it went into the whole renaissance where Destiny started struggling. The Division rolled a number of updates after they got through all of their promised DLC, and all of a sudden, the Division became a much better product. So one of the things that I said was, I want to keep my eye on what happens with the Division 2. Whenever it comes out, I'm going to give it a fair shake. I'm going to play the demos, the betas, whatever they offer. I want to like this game because I enjoyed playing the campaign. So I fired up the demo, and you guys will see in the background, I'm obviously playing some of the content. And again, some of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed in the Division 1, I'm enjoying in the beta. I like the PvE sections of the game. I like going from mission to mission, building up the city, doing these, whatever these control points are, to basically capture objectives and have these allies help you. I like that kind of stuff. I like building up the White House again, the communications team, and then doing security teams, and whatever you have, the tech team. This is the stuff that I like in video games. And yeah, the enemies are a little bullet spongy, but that's okay. The fact is, I enjoy what the Division beta has offered so far. I did not dive into the Dark Zone, and a big reason for that is because I know the Dark Zone is fucked. I did play a little bit of it. I did set foot into the initial mission that they offered, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going back unless I actually have a full party with me. For the most part, I was doing everything solo, and obviously the matchmaking portions. But for someone like me, someone who left the Division at its worst, someone who really left the Division right when it was struggling the most, and didn't come back after all the improvements, what I play right now feels pretty good. And for people who played the Division all the way through to the end, they decided to stick with the franchise and hope that they would fix the game. I'm sure those who are playing the beta right now are playing it and saying, you know what? This is exactly what the Division was supposed to be like. All the improvements that the Division 1 made at the end of its life cycle, after all the promised DLC was over, is what we're seeing right now in the Division 2. And I enjoyed playing what I played. I do want to play more of the game. However, I still struggle with the idea of the endgame content. One of the challenges that you just notice with this game is, again, the limitations that it has. They're going to have an 8-player raid. They're going to have the new PvP separate mode. And, of course, the 3 different dark zones for all the different ideas that people want to go into and what they want to do when they play. Some people just want to go in and do PvE. Kill high-level enemies, extract some shit, maybe kill a guy on a manhunt or whatever the fuck it is. And then there are people that want to go in and be assholes and have the best level gear and basically fuck shit up. And that's fine. They finally separated this out so people have the opportunity to do things like this. The biggest problem that the Division 1 had was they had very little separation of PvE and PvP. Many people see that in games that try to combine both elements. Destiny is obviously a great example of that. You make a change on something on the PvP level. It's a little too powerful against other players. However, when you start using it against the AI, now it really sucks and there's no point in using it. Or something is absolutely fantastic in PvE, needs to get toned down, but then when it goes to the PvP section, it's like, well, wait a second, why am I using this now? There are a number of things that did not separate church and state with the Division 1. I didn't get to see that in full view in Division 2. Obviously, this is just a beta. It's only a small slice of the game. It's just probably the beginning portion of the game. But the good thing is right now, I'm intrigued about the game. I like what I've played. And I like what I played because I enjoyed what I played in the Division 1 up until the end game. Now, obviously, the beta, a demo, they're not going to offer you end game. They're going to kind of show you what they have in mind. They're not going to show you anything with the 8-player raids. But some of the things that I've enjoyed right now, I'm probably going to enjoy in the future. Some of the things that I didn't enjoy in the Division 1, I'm probably not going to enjoy in the Division 2. One of the things that always irked me, and I know this is part of the game, I know this is the core of the gameplay, is the amount of fucking shit you collect when it comes to your character. All the gear, all the weapons, all the perks that were on the weapons. Remember the electronics rating, the strength rating. Oh my god, that shit was just fucking irritating trying to keep track of all that shit. I don't want a dumbed down game that strips anything of RPG away. The problem that I have was that what you were building towards honestly didn't make any sense. And for someone who didn't have 20 hours a day to spend collecting all the gear, you always felt like you were one step behind. That was one of my biggest knocks with The Division, was that I could have a great gun, but somebody has a backpack, a pair of gloves, and knee pads that are better than mine, all of a sudden I can't kill them. I hated that feeling. I hated feeling that no matter how much I played the game, I just was not as powerful as some of the other players that obviously played way more than I ever did. I know The Division is working towards minimizing that gap. I agree to a certain extent with that. What I don't agree with is whether they strip all the RPG elements of the game that get you to that point. Some players know that they're going to play the game a lot, and they're going to be very powerful when it comes to the hardest levels of the Dark Zone. Other players are not going to have 20 hours a day to dedicate. They might only have 2 or 3 hours to dedicate. So by the time they actually get into the Dark Zone, they're going to get absolutely stomped. To me, that is always going to be the biggest problem with The Division. How do you balance hardcore players versus casual players? Will casual players ever get the opportunity to get the gear that the hardcore players do? I don't know if they will. I don't know if that could ever happen. But what I can certainly tell you is you were not going to get that answer in the beta or the demo. There was just no question about that. We were just going to get a very early slice of the game, show some of the content, and then move on towards whatever the next piece they're going to offer up, whether it's an open beta, open demo, whatever they have. Personally, everything about the opening of the game still appeals to me. The whole PvP section, the whole campaign, going around, collecting shit, doing all the side missions. It's the end game that still worries me the most with The Division. And because we're not going to get the opportunity to play any end game, because we shouldn't, I just don't know if it's going to be a game that I still want to get. Anthem has its own question marks. Destiny has always just been one giant fucking question mark. But The Division's end game for me has always been a question mark. Not because it's bad, but it's just because it might not be the flavor of game that I personally like. So I got to play the beta. I got to enjoy it for the time that I did play, enjoy all the PvE sections. But the pieces that I am most worried about are the sections that we weren't given access to in the beta. So that'll be something that I'll have to decide down the road. So for you guys who still enjoyed The Division, you like Division 1 Endgame, and you think that it's going to be like The Division 2, you're probably just going to like this game. If you're the type that didn't like what The Division 1 turned into, you might not like what The Division 2 is going to be. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And I'll see you guys in the next video.